chapter 3 of Tribal Church is entitled The First Tribe. And of course, the first tribe that God created was the family. The Bible says that he saw Adam, and Adam was alone, and he said, "It's not good that man should be alone. Therefore, I will make him a helpfit." And he caused that first man to fall into a deep sleep, and he took a rib from his side, and from that rib he made the first woman. And the man woke up and he saw his wife there beside him, and he said, "Behold, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." He could have also said, "Behold, I have created," or God has created, the first tribe, because the first tribe is the family. You know, we have 13 values here at Lake Point, and several years ago, in fact, it was about 6 years ago, we sat down to evaluate ourselves on how well we were doing in living out our values. Now, one of those values goes something like this. We believe that the family is the primary vehicle for discipleship. Now, as we evaluated ourselves in terms of how well we were living out those values, that particular value out of 13 values came in dead last. Now, it wasn't that we didn't believe the value that the family was the primary vehicle for spiritual formation. It was just that it wasn't happening in our church. We start to evaluate why, and here's what we found out. We found out that the parents in our church were outsourcing the spiritual development of their children to the church. They thought those folks know a whole lot more about theology than I do, and the student ministry knows a whole lot more about high school or middle school students, and the children ministry knows a whole lot more about my children than I do. And so they just drop them off at the church, even though they were here at the church, many of them, drop them off with the student ministry or the children's ministry and let them win my kids to Christ and then let them disciple my children. And so we decided we had to do something. And so through a long process, we started what we're calling the Faith at Home movement. At our particular church, we call it Home Point because the name of our church is Lake Point. But the important part is that we were saying to the parents, this is your job. Now, really, this effort, this movement that's really sweeping, I think, across the nation and even the world now, has 4 elements to it. The first is a declaration. We stood up one weekend and we said to our people, listen, it's not our job to win your kids to Christ. It's not our job to disciple your kids. That's your job. And if it's going to be done, it's going to be because you do it. We're here to help you. We're going to resource you. But we're going to keep reminding you that this is your job, something God has given you to do, not us. The second thing we had to do is we had to resource those parents. You see, many of the parents were willing to disciple their kids, to win their own kids to Christ, but they weren't doing it because they didn't know how. And so we knew that we had to help them find the necessary resources. And here's how we've done it. We've identified at least 26 different family types, just to name a few. Beginning a new marriage, married without kids, married with preschoolers, empty nesters, grandparents, blended families, families with children who have special needs. There are all kinds of family types. And then what we've done is we've resourced each one of those family types. And you can take a brochure and you can look and it will be listed there, the tapes or the books or the messages that can help you with your particular family season. And then what we've done is we've created a kiosk in the center of our main campus and also in the center of all of our satellite campuses called Home Point. And when you go there, you can find one of those brochures and first of all, identify what season your family is in or your type of family. It's going to give a little biblical background for that, but then it's going to identify key resources. You see, we live in an age where we have more resources for the family than ever before. The problem is not a lack of resources. It's just that the church, by necessity, must be an information broker. We must tell them the book to read on Christian marriage. We must tell them the book to read if they're grandparents for the very first time. We must tell them the books to read if they're having trouble with discipline with their children. And so this brochure will not only identify their family type or season, but it will give them the resources that we would point them to. And then in that Home Point Center, we provide the very resources that we're recommending. So it's kind of a one-stop shop, and they can get those resources right then. First thing is to make a declaration. The second thing is to resource your people and train them. But the third thing is for you to help them, remind them of their responsibility. Now, we do that through campaigns, and campaigns are where twice a year we come back to the topic of marriage, we come back to the topic of family, we come back to that topic of passing your faith on to your kids. And we drill down on one particular, what we call a holy habit, that if it becomes a tradition in your home, will make it more likely that your marriage will glorify God, make it more likely that you will pass your faith on to your kids. Let me just give you some examples. The first campaign that we had was a campaign called Praying Together, and we asked our people to commit themselves to be a 7-5-2 family. Now, a 7-5-2 family is a family, first of all, that prays for one another 7 days a week. Every family can do that. Second of all, that 5 stands for a family that prays together 5 times a week. And even if one family member travels with technology today, you can still pray together 5 times a week. And the good news is you get to count mealtime. And then the 2 stands for, if this fits your particular family type, where mom and dad share intimate prayer requests and then pray out loud for each other while they're holding hands. The 7-5-2 family. Pray for each other 7 days a week, pray with each other 5 days a week, and then husband and wife pray with each other out loud after sharing intimate prayer requests. And our people committed to be a 7-5-2 family, thousands of them, for 120 days. Well, after 120 days, this became a habit in their life. And the thing that we found out by surveying our people is the least likely thing to happen in a Christian home is regular prayer time together. And we all believe in prayer, but we just don't get around to it. Once it becomes a habit in the home, then we can go to reinforce other habits. Other campaigns that we've had are campaigns like serving together. And then we've recently had a campaign about blessing the people that are in your family, celebrating each person's unique way that they've been created by God. And we're in a campaign right now called Meals Together, where we've challenged our people to turn off the television set, put down the mobile device, and actually look at each other and talk to each other during a meal at least 3 times a week. And not just to talk, but to find out what's going on in the other person's life and encourage them to glorify God in their life, to support and to pray for one another. And so these campaigns are a way of reminding. So first of all, we declare. Second of all, we resource. And then third, we remind. And then the final thing is alignment. And here's what I mean by alignment. We ask all of our ministries, our existing ministries, to align with the family. Not have the family align with us, but us to align with the family. And we're starting to look at every one of our ministries through the lens of the family. And what we've noticed is that we have unnecessarily left the family out of the programming that's going on at church. And so now we're not adding new programs. The last thing you need to do is add a bunch of parenting courses that get your parents away from your kids, and men's activities that get them away from their wives. To use the existing programming to include the family. Let me just give you one example of that. It used to be that we would take our students off to camp, and they would have a wonderful experience, but then they would come home and their parents would say, "What did you learn at camp?" And the kid would give a short answer, and the parent really didn't know what we were doing at camp, so there was no way that they could reinforce what we were teaching at camp. Well, now we're actually recording what's going on at camp. The parents can sit home and on the internet listen to the same talks that their middle school student or their high school student or their grade school student is experiencing at camp. And so what we've done is, by doing that simple thing, we've included the parent in the experience. And so now they can reinforce what their young people are experiencing. And it's very few changes are really necessary to take it up to a really higher level to include the parents in what you're trying to accomplish as either a student ministry or a youth ministry. There are many tribes in the church, but the first tribe that God created, and the first tribe that must become a priority for us to equip to do ministry, is the tribe called the family.